My name's Todd. I'm the middle school director.
I'm Ashley. I'm the high school pastor here. And we're excited that you gave up your time tonight to come and learn. So thank you, first of all, for being here. I also want to tell you about a couple other things. We're going to send a binder around if you missed sign up out there. We want to make sure to be able to follow up with you if you would like us to. We won't spam you, don't worry. But would love to follow up with you. And then we also have very important news that there are cookies in the lobby. If you haven't gotten those or anything like that, so please enjoy yourself back there. And then we also want to capture your feedback. We have a survey, so don't fill that out beforehand, or else we won't really get good feedback. So wait till the end, and we would love to just hear, was this helpful for you? Would you want to do something like this again? We would love to do these more often and better. So if you could give us a couple of minutes of feedback, we'd love that as well. But we'll remind you of those things, so don't worry.
We don't get to see you all a lot, so your feedback is really important. Make sure you come up and say hi to us. We'd love to know who you are and like what kid you claim. You don't have to claim all of them, but whichever one you want us to know about, that's great. But I'm really excited to introduce my friend Susan. Susan and I actually know each other from like college days, but we won't share any of that stuff. But my family, as we've been learning how to raise our kids and figuring out how to do this better, we got introduced to the stuff Susan's doing. It's just been really informative to me as a youth pastor as well as a parent. So we're excited to bring her in here. So I'm going to read the official bio so you know all that stuff. Our guest this evening is Susan Dunaway, an alumna of the University of Kansas. Susan owns her own neural counseling business locally. She is licensed and certified counselor with 13 plus years of experience in the field. She specializes in children, adolescents, and parents, plus digital and screen-based challenges. When kids struggle academically, behaviorally, and socially, parents struggle to find the best solution. They are often pointed toward medication and strict behavioral plans. Susan offers a different approach, a blend of neurofeedback and therapy. She uses play therapy, talk therapy, and parenting support to work through feelings and help the family gain skills. We are so excited Susan said yes to be with us tonight. So will you warmly welcome her? There we go.
Thank you. Yeah, Todd was upset that we didn't put Baker on there, so I was first a graduate of Baker. And then I went to KU. Okay, so thank you very much for joining me tonight and working on trying to tackle this issue. So we are talking about being created for connection, but not to a screen. And if you have any issues hearing me with mic stuff, let me know, and I'll make sure that I pull it up a little bit closer. So let's get this show on the road. So when my kids were born, I got this book, and you might know it. It's called You're Special by Max Lucado. And it follows the journey of these little wimicks, these little wooden people. And they go around all day giving each other stars and dots. Stars if you're great, dots if you're not. And this little guy, Punchinello, he doesn't do much right. He's clumsy. He gets a lot of things wrong, gets a lot of dots. Of course, he doesn't feel very good about himself. So one day he runs into this little wooden person named Lucia, and she has no stars or dots. And he's not sure if this is good or bad. Like, she doesn't have any stars, so is that bad? She doesn't have any dots, is that good? And so he asks her, and she says, well, they try to give them to me, but the dots don't stick. Nothing sticks. And he's like, well, why? And she says, because every day I go visit our creator, the wood carver, Eli. He lives up over the hill. You should go and see him. And so Punchinello gets up his courage, and he decides to go meet his creator. He didn't want to at first because he feels pretty bad about himself because of all of his dots. But, of course, his creator is so excited to see him, and he picks him up, and he looks him in his eyes, and he loves him. But he addresses the elephant in the room, and he says, you have a lot of dots, Punchinello. And he goes, I tried really hard. I'm not a good wooden person. And he goes, this is my favorite line in the whole book. He goes, Punchinello, who are they to give you stars or dots? They're just little wooden people like you. And then he encourages him, come and see me every day until what you know about yourself is what I know about you. And he does, and eventually those stars and dots start to fall off. So I love this book. I think it's like prophetic because it was written before social media. but our kids are getting rated at a level that we never had to experience. And that's just one of the issues that we have to face, one of the challenges that we have to face, raising our kids with this. It's hard to be rated. We are created to be connected. But I think that technology is hijacking and exploiting that natural need for connection. And I would say that it's just like a generational difference. It's just the way things are. And I hear that a lot from parents. They're like, well, I don't know, it's just the way things are right now. So it's just like how it was for us. We just did things differently. But as somebody who's been studying this and researching this for years, I can tell you it does not seem to be the same. I would say that that was okay if we didn't have an increase in all the scary stuff that we don't want to have increases in. Depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, suicidal actions, loneliness, and feeling left out. It's really interesting to me that the more hyper-connected our kids are, the more lonely and left out they feel. And it increases as the percentage of kids who have their own devices and have social media. As that increases, loneliness and feeling left out increases. It doesn't make sense unless we think that maybe what they're connecting to is the wrong thing. So there is a lot of overlap, just as an aside, that I'm going to say to your kids and say to you. There's a lot that I'm not going to tell them. So some of the scarier stuff I'm leaving out of the kids, and I'll try as I go along to say, here's what they're going to get and here's what they're not, because there is going to be a lot of overlap and talking points, is my hope. So they're seeing this stuff, and we're going to talk about what should you be connecting to. And you're in church, so the answer is Jesus. Yep. Mm-hmm. We'll see whether they can say that too. So connecting to God is one of the first things that I want to do for how do we get mental health care really good with our kids? How do we connect them and make them protected against the stuff that is scary for them to walk through? So Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all your soul, and with all of your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. So connecting vertically. And then the second is like it, to love your neighbor as yourself, connected to others. But I just said the more hyper-connected they are, the more lonely they feel. And so what's the disconnect in the connection talk? Well, I do mean connection that's more personal, that's more face-to-face. I also think that there is an enemy that's working to leverage all of this. And this is the stuff I don't get into with your kids. However, there was a quote in the New York Times once, a couple of years ago, a Facebook executive, as she was leaving Facebook, she said, I believe the devil lives in our cell phones and is wreaking havoc on our children. It was in the New York Times. I don't believe the devil lives in the cell phone. I do, however, think that he can leverage what is happening in technology to mess with our kids. And so I talk about 3 ways that I think that he gets in the way: sidetracking, shadow connections, and to keep us separate. So I'm going to talk about those. But God has an agenda too, and he wins. Yay. And that's all about connection. Connecting to God, connecting to yourself, and connecting to others. So let's jump into this. Sidetrack is a thing that I don't really get into with the kids because of just time issues. I have a little bit less time with them. But when your kids are multitasking, I want you to know it is not good for their brains, and they actually can't do it. Neither can you. It's called task switching. The brain is incapable of multitasking. It has to engage in one thing, and then if it needs to do something else, it disengages with that thing and then re-engages and then disengages and re-engages. And it can do that very, very quickly when you're young, but there is a cognitive toll, an energy toll, and it messes with this part that you want to develop fully, called the anterior cingulate cortex, responsible for this thing. This stuff. Do I plan carefully? Am I self-controlled? Do I act on the spur of the moment? Am I easily bored? All things we want fully developed. The research is saying that the more kids multitask specifically, the more it inhibits development of this. The more the anterior cingulate cortex is not fully developed, the more problems they have focusing, the more likely they are to multitask, the more likely they are to not be able to do these things, and the cycle continues. And so focusing on one thing at a time, really important. So teaching your kids, if you're doing homework with one window open or one screen open, or you're on one subject, and the phone, I know you need all of the help, you don't need all of the help. So a lot of their excuses are excuses because they're teenagers and they're good at that, and that's their job. They exist, in this one I'm telling them, in a state of what we call continuous partial attention. So what that means is I'm always kind of somewhere, and I'm always kind of everywhere. So if they are at worship and they have their cell phones, then they get a notification, and it schedules an idea in their mind that maybe they didn't want to have. They have the Bible app on their phone, and they want to look up a Bible verse, and they pull up their cell phone, and they have 97 missed notifications. Now, they have decisions to make, and it's scheduled thoughts in their mind that they did not have before. They want to go take a picture of this slide. Same thing happens. They are always hyper-connected in a way that keeps them from focusing on one thing and keeps them from connecting. The more that they do all of the screen time, the more it messes with this next part, the nucleus accumbens. I promise I will not do 30 minutes of brain parts, okay? There's like 3 brain parts, and you're at 2, so you're okay. The nucleus accumbens is a hub. It's like Dallas-Fort Worth, okay? Everything kind of goes in and goes out of this. So if this hub gets messed up, whole brain system gets messed with. It also helps with habit forming, and it's one of the places where dopamine goes out of. So dopamine is supposed to be something that drips every once in a while. You get up on time, good job. You got to school on time, good job. You got this assignment turned in on time, good job. You found your friends at lunch, good job. It keeps us going. It's meant to be something that keeps us going, and then it's for novel things. But the people who create technology, they know exactly how to capture attention, and they know exactly how to keep your eyeballs on it. And so the more your eyeballs are on it, or the more notifications you're getting, or the more colors are changing, the more the nucleus accumbens is going boom, boom, boom. You're getting dopamine, 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 dopamine. You're not supposed to get it like this. So when you keep getting it like this, eventually what the brain says is, I cannot process this anymore. Stop. And it doesn't stop making it. It stops bringing it up and using it. What happens after that is the depression or risk-taking. I need to do bigger things to get a dopamine hit. Or you tell them to turn off the screen and they say, I'm bored. So if they're not being entertained by a screen, they're very quickly bored. And this is a clue that they've been on too long. So I'm here to tell you that boredom is one of the best things for your kids. Boredom, this is your third network, your third brain part. It activates a thing called the default mode network. So this isn't one brain part, it's several brain parts that are all kind of connected, like a highway system connects Overland Park and Olathe. It only comes online when you're not doing something, or with what you're doing is rote memory. Like if you're in the shower and you always go through the exact same routine and your mind starts wandering, that's a default mode network. If you're starting to go to sleep and then you remember, oh, that's that person's name, that's the default mode network. If you're sitting on the couch binge watching Netflix, doesn't come on because the brain is doing something. So you might think they're not doing something, but they are. So you have to have this network for creativity, especially writing, literary creativity, for remembering things, for imagining the future, and for understanding others. So pretty big deal for your kids. If you have high schoolers and they need to imagine what's Arizona State versus KU, can I imagine myself on this campus? Can I imagine myself in this career? They have to be able to imagine the future. They can't do that without the default mode network. It also protects against anxiety. So there's this, when this network comes on, it like downshifts the brain. And when kids don't get any moments where they're not actively being entertained, it's like they're a race car that never slows down. You burn through a lot of gas, and it doesn't go so well. So we have to have times when they don't do anything at all. Now, here's the caveat to this. If your kiddo is struggling with depression or anxiety and you tell them to do nothing, what will happen is they will feel worse. Now, everybody's going to feel worse because they're bored. Get over it, you're fine, is the answer for the kids who don't deal with depression or anxiety. The kids who do, when they have quiet, what they start doing is imagining worst-case scenarios. I can't go to Arizona State because I'm going to fail. This is going to be terrible. I'm not going to make any friends. And they start, whew. So here's the thing that I'm telling your kids, that there is a really cool treasure map in the Bible. And it's so fun. There's a field called neurotheology that is so fun because it looks at how the Bible and God intersects with what the brain does. I geek out on this stuff. This is an amazing verse that he had to have thought it was so fun to make this and be like, eventually they're going to understand this. But now that we can look into the brain, we really see the impact of this verse right here. Philippians 4, 6 through 7. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your request to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Here's the cool part. All of these different colors, if you're doing these things, if you're praying, if you're getting into a habit of praying, if you're listening things that you are grateful for, different parts of the brain light up, and all of those parts work together to protect the brain against anxiety and depression, and it actually guards your heart and your mind. It is so cool. Yeah, I know. It's how I roll. There is a guy called Dr. Andrew Newberg who studies this in this book called How God Changes Your Brain. I'm not putting this slide up to your kids. It's way too many words. Activities involving meditation and intensive prayer permanently strengthen neural functioning in specific parts of the brain that are involved with lowering anxiety and depression, enhancing social awareness and empathy, and improving cognitive and intellectual functioning. Such practices help you remain calm, serene, peaceful, and alert. If we want our kids to be calm, we do have to give them space to connect to God. And how do we do that? We literally give them some space. We tell them, hey, in the mornings, let's not have your phone up before you're up. Or let's have some days where in the mornings what you do is you have some prayer time. You practice gratitude, not just at Thanksgiving, but other days where you say out loud, like, hey, I'm just excited the car started this morning, or I'm grateful that we have heat, and just kind of say those things, because practicing gratitude, that helps with that nucleus accumbens when it gets all messed up. It brings it back online again. So practicing gratitude is huge. Praying, reading their Bible, having a devotional, if they can do that even just every once in a while, it's going to be helpful. And I'm going to teach them about that part as well. But we also have to set up some success with some places that they don't have technology. So I'm giving the same slides basically to everybody. My no phone zones, the things that I would like all of my clients to do. There is no phone behind a closed door. In our house, there's no phone behind a closed door. We have an 8th grader and a 6th grader. The 8th grader has a phone. Nobody has social media. The 6th grader does not yet have a phone. And it is not allowed, basically any place but the living room. Nothing in the bedroom. Sleep is one of the hugest parts of good brain development. And in a survey that was done in Kansas City and Lee Summit a couple years ago about suicide, teens reported that not enough sleep was the biggest factor. When they listed a bunch of factors for suicidal ideation, not enough sleep was the top factor. They know, but they can't do it themselves because they're all texting them, and they will tell you, I just use it as an alarm, or I need my music to fall asleep. 80% of kids who say that they only use it as an alarm wake up for every notification. And if you're telling them this, and I've told them this tonight too, and they say, but I silence it. It doesn't matter. There's some really interesting studies that show that if the phone is in the room, even if it is off, their level of sleep is not as deep. It's not as restorative. And they're doing their second biggest brain change that they will ever do in their life during adolescence, during sleep. First was the first 18 months of life. So sleep is imperative, and getting the phones out of the bedroom is imperative. The second one is in the bathroom. So what I'm telling them and what I'm telling you is any place that you're used to being naked is not a place that a camera and access to the World Wide Web should happen. I worked with a police officer that does cyber crimes in Overland Park, and he said like 98% of the reasons that he has to go in and confiscate a device from a minor happens in the bedroom or the bathroom at 3 o'clock in the morning. Our kids are not yet fully developed, and they make dumb mistakes. And you are much more likely to make a dumb mistake behind a closed door where you're used to getting naked at 3 a.m. So let's just try to eliminate that. The third one is in the car. And the car, if you have a driver, let's see if I can do this. Hold, please. If you have a driver, then it's the safety thing as well, of course. But if you don't, it's the be with who you are with. So if we want to protect our kids against depression and anxiety and all the scary stuff, we need to teach them to connect to the people that are in front of them and get rid of some continuous partial attention. So why do I not want it in the car? Because that's a time when you guys can connect. You guys can talk. You have a captive audience, and they will fight, and they'll want different music and all the stuff that is the mess of life, but that's the mess of life. And then the last one is at meals for the same reason. Be present. So these are your rules as well. Be present as much as possible. There's always going to be an exception. That's the world. But we like to live as though the exception is the rule as opposed to it's the exception. Because these kids get a lot of dots. So we move into this idea of shadow connections. And this is an idea that came to me that where again, the enemy will leverage things and say, you have a lot of friends. They might be social media friends, and they might say really mean things to you, but you have friends, you're fine. Shadow connections don't give us the same connections. I'm not giving them any of this stuff, but teens who spend 5 or more hours on social media are 70% more likely to have suicidal thoughts. And it doesn't take much. You think 5 hours is a lot, but if they take it to school, it's not hard for them to get it. Another study found that increased time on social media or just watching TV increased with depressive symptoms. And I could go all into the why of that if you want to know, but we're going to run out of time, so I won't. But more is not better when it comes to mental health. One survey just asked teens how they felt when they were on an app and when they got off. So this slide, my 11-year-old, 12-year-old, he just turned 12, loves this slide. He thinks the smiley faces are great. But it's a good representation that most apps aren't necessarily bad. It depends on a whole lot of factors. But most kids kind of feel all right when they're on it for a little bit. It's when the app kind of takes over, stealing your time, and you're on it way longer than you meant to, that you get off and go, oh. It's only Google Maps that you're happy when you're on it longer. I don't know, you're like driving farther, and that's more exciting. I have no idea on that one. But time has consequences, and the more time that they're on it, the worse it tends to be. So give them breaks or let them know that they want to be in charge of this and not have this in charge of them, which is part of what I'll be talking to them about. The idea of separation is my last one, and I think it's my scariest one when we talk about suicide. I do think that the enemy loves to leverage the fact that in order to use one of these devices, they're very solitary. And, you know, an enemy never goes after the pack. He always separates some out. And he basically can separate everybody out right now. It's really interesting. I was changing this until the literal last minute because I just found this graph today. It came out in the Journal of American Medical Association yesterday. So I put it in. This is a graph of the increase of suicide, completed suicide in our youth. And I know we've talked a lot about suicide. This particular topic was on interventions and whether any of the interventions helped. And so the blue lines with the words above them, those are different interventions. that didn't do anything. I find it interesting that as the trend goes up, it starts in 2007. The iPhone's introduced in 2007. It hits a tipping point of 50% of the population in kids around 2011, 2012, and then you really see things increase. So the more we've had these and the more we've had social media, the more that our suicide rates have gone up. And they get a whole bunch of experts in a lot of rooms arguing about whether this has a factor or not, but you can't take it off the table as a possibility. The more we're separated and the more all of these other things are happening, the more it seems to impact their mental health. And half of all the ER visits for suicidal thoughts or actions between 2007 and 2015 were for kids from 5 to 11. So that's where our biggest category is coming, is our little ones. And we want that to be rare. And it's definitely not prevalent, but it is trending up, and we don't ever want that to trend up. Tristan Harris is one of my heroes. He runs a place called the Center for Humane Technology. He used to be a design ethicist at Google. He helped keep things streaming along. He's one of the reasons why people go into zombie mode. He designed that, and now he talks against it and works to try to fix the problems from a Silicon Valley level. He says solitary confinement is the worst punishment we can give, and we have technology that's basically maximizing isolation because it needs to maximize that time that's spent in front of a screen. So basically, we need to understand the fact that technology is designed to separate our kids. It's designed to separate all of us because it needs time on device. It needs time on app. It needs time on platform. That's how it makes its money. So it doesn't particularly care if it's consuming us. It just needs that. And the more that we separate, the more lonely we get. So 26% of high school seniors said they often felt lonely in 2012. It was 39% by 2017. 30% said they felt left out in 2012. 38% by 2017. So more kids have them, more kids have social media, and more kids are feeling lonely and left out. It's important for you to know this if you have not yet decided to get your kid a phone or access to social media, and they're saying, but I'm being left out. The reality is you actually might feel more left out if you have it, because now you can see in real time where you're not and where everybody else is and what they're wearing and what they're doing and what they have and what they can do that you're not, and comparing their reality to yours or their posted reality to yours. So hold your ground if it's a not yet. So what do we do? Besides the no phone zones and connecting to God, connecting to loved ones is really important. And I need you guys to understand some things about how the brain works with connection. We have to touch or see or hear a loved one's voice to combat the stress in our bodies. So stress in our bodies is cortisol. When we see, touch, or hear, our cortisol goes down and our oxytocin goes up. Oxytocin, I use like a Pac-Man analogy for the kids. Oxytocin is a little bit of a Pac-Man, and then if you see or connect with somebody, it becomes a big Pac-Man and it eats the cortisol. That's its job. But it does not work when you text. It doesn't happen if you read it. Our brains haven't changed that much. And so it's okay. I'm telling people, like, if you need to reach out and you need to get an encouragement from a parent or a loved one, and so you get a text, that's nice, but your brain will not change. The stress hormones will not go down. So if you need to do that, and then connect. So we have to connect with our kids at a different level. We have to practice being present with them. Be with who you're with. So it's really important that you model good tech habits yourself. There's always exceptions, but try. Ask your kids, is there anything that you wish that I would change about what I'm doing? Or is there anything that you wish that our family would change? I'm a therapist, for goodness sake. If y'all came to me and I was like, I really want to know what's going on in your family. Would you feel as connected to me? And would you think that I was as connected to you? we need them out of sight. If it's even on the table, face down, we do not feel as connected. We won't necessarily know why, but we won't. So they need to be out of sight, and they need to be silenced when possible. There are settings that you can do. So if you're like, but I have a kid who's driving, and so if I'm connecting with this kid, I need to be able to get messages from this kid. You can have exceptions that say this message can come through, or you can change your settings so that work comes through. So always you can allow for exceptions, but for the most part, try to engage with your kids with the phone absolutely out of sight. Make eye contact, hug them, talk to them, let them hear your voice, get some oxytocin in them. There's other things that make oxytocin too, because Jesus likes us. When we get together, let us not give up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but let us encourage one another. When we get together and worship, we create oxytocin. When we listen to music, when we sing collectively, we make oxytocin. It protects the brain, and it bonds us to a church community. The last thing that's interesting to know about is volunteering, especially if you don't know the person you're helping. And then teenagers don't feel a need to try to fix things and all this stuff that they can't do. So volunteering guards against anxiety and depression, improves self-esteem, especially if the volunteer helps a stranger. So getting them to know about Serve Saturday or different opportunities to get involved, it's also a really good thing to then process later to add to that gratitude. It's really good for the Nucleus Accumbens, because I'm sure you remembered the Nucleus Accumbens. If you're interested in some books or some organizations where you can look and see whether I was crazy with any of the stuff that I said, these are some really good ones. And I think Todd might send that out. He said yes. So when I said that the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy, the other end of the sentence is the better one. I have come that they might have life and have it to the full. So it's our job to try to help them connect to what actually matters. I have like 45 seconds left. I'm like, woohoo! He said 30 minutes.
I just heard the worship music end over there, so it's like we're going to run her over and let her speak to students. She will be back at the end to help answer some questions. So as you guys have some group discussion and we need some more clarification, she'll be here. But will you give her a round of applause, and then we'll bring her back here in a little bit? All right. I'm going to leave you with Ashley, and we'll be back in a little bit.
Thanks so much, Susan. We'll see you when you're back. She's getting the runaround. She's doing this, then she goes talk to middle schoolers, then she comes back to you for question and answer, and then she goes to high school. And then she gets to sleep, I think. Yeah. So we just heard a lot from Susan and a lot of wonderful stuff. And it may also be stuff that has some teeth to it for you. We want this to be a space of non-parental guilt, because every parent walks around with that little monster in your head that says all the time, right? So we don't want this presentation to leave you feeling that way. And in some ways, we want to lean into the oxytocin in our brains and connect tonight. But before we do that, we're going to take a 5-minute break. That way you can get those incredible cookies that we told you about. You can have a beverage back there or use the restroom. And then we also have we've got a lot of resources back there on that back table. If you haven't signed in, we would love to have you sign in so we can follow up with some of this stuff to your inbox. Don't worry, we won't spam you. Just a one-time follow-up unless you would like to opt in. But yeah, so just a reminder, all that stuff's back there, and just take a 5-minute break and we'll come back and kind of have some initial reflection together. Well, welcome back. I saw that we ran out of some stuff back there, so I'm trying to make sure we get some more out there on your way out. You can pick up, there's one handout that is conversation on anxiety for both middle school and high school. And there's also some little cards that are about depression or suicide or anxiety that will be out there if you are looking for stuff. They'll be out there when you leave. So I love how interested you are and picked all that stuff up. So I want to just have us have some initial reactions to this together. not just be isolated people receiving this information, but be parents in the room who can learn from each other about just kind of initial thoughts to this, what's kind of happening in your neck of the woods. And so we'll just have some initial reflection together, and then I'm actually going to make you talk to each other. It'll be a great time. Don't worry. If you're like, no, I'm an introvert, it's fine. Most of us are. It'll be good. But we're just going to connect with each other and learn the resources that are out there that each of us are sharing around and kind of help with that sharing. So first, initial reactions to this. Anyone? I need a mic runner.
No, I thought it was just good. Anything that keeps you away from God. So part of it just depends on what you're looking at in the social media, but a lot of it probably isn't good.
Yeah, so just really connecting to the part of like, there's some evil forces out there that want to keep us separate from God or from others. Great. Any other responses to this?
I just thought that she could take out talking about the students and just insert parents, because I think a lot of that applies to us as well. And, it's hard to put it away. It's hard to make those habits, but we need to do it for, the kids are watching and they see us doing that too, getting sucked in.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of that I thought, I'm bad at that. I need to have those boundaries for myself. And they're watching. Students watch me too, and I forget that. Other reactions? Go back here. Oh, yeah. 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 Yes. So social media is like, at least for high schoolers, top is YouTube, which is interesting because you wouldn't think YouTube is social, but it is for them, like comments and engaging and following different personalities on YouTube. So YouTube's number one. TikTok is up there. I don't think it's number two. I think Instagram and Snapchat are number two and three, and then TikTok. So you can interact and all sorts of things. Facebook's not really their thing. Yeah, Facebook is older, trends older. But what's interesting, as a high school pastor here, I still have students that will, they've never had a Facebook account, but they will open a new one. They have all the other social medias. And they'll open one, now. And no. Probably, maybe I'm 3,000 years old to them. Seriously. But yeah, maybe to connect with their family or to connect with, other generations in their lives. Yeah. Did I catch all those social medias? Is that that's where I hear students are? Yeah. That's interesting. I didn't know that about Venmo. But yeah, that's happening with millennials too, all sorts of interactions. Yeah. There is a private option. The default is public. But could you everybody hear that? Yeah. Another thing in the same vein, what is it? It's if you're a gamer, World of Warcraft was an older one, but similar games that are all really super social, that can also be a ton of dopamine and a ton of those hyper connections that aren't really that deep. Yeah.
Just one app that I know my kids have interacted with is called Discord, and one of the things I've heard is that Discord doesn't have great protections against extremist, type groups, and kids can get exposed to. I'm not saying it's full of neo-Nazis or whatever, but that's one that's out there. And then someone told me that, or showed me how you can go to map.snapchat.com, and you can basically hover over Kansas City and basically click on it's like a heat map like you're watching Res Online, except it's actually people whose Snapchats are publicly, available to anyone. So it's just a matter of, I guess you can pick an address and see if you can stalk someone, or you can just kind of use it as an example to teach Snapchat users to make sure the privacy settings are what they expect them to be.
Yeah, on a lot of these apps, the privacy settings are pretty lax. And so going in and making sure you're doing the homework on that stuff is important. Other reactions? Yeah.
Follow up on that comment. I don't need that. You know, the problem is you try to go on to a privacy setting. When I'm an adult, I'm fully capable, and I'm pretty technically savvy. It's hard as heck
Yeah.
to change those privacy settings without them defaulting back. So if they do reboots or resets, all of those
Really?
things that you've just taken the time to try to put in place, they get overrun. And so you've got to constantly be vigilant about what you're allowing in or what kind of access they have.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. What I am learning from Gen Z is if they don't know how to do something, and I know it doesn't do this if the app, like, if you're saying the app updates and then it just reverts back to the default. Okay, some of them do. But I'm learning from them. If they don't know how to do something, they're on YouTube, like, figuring out how to do it because somebody's made a video. You know? It's just like, okay, cool. You know, how to tie your shoe, how to change the settings on, you know, this, that, and the other. Someone's made a video of it, which is helpful, I guess, in home repair, you know, for adulting. Any other reactions to what we heard tonight? Oh, then back there.
I just thought the multitasking thing was super interesting because as adults, we find ourselves doing that. We never do anything really well when we do that. And I see my kids multitasking often. I never thought of the effect on the brain like she showed, and I thought that was super interesting.
Yeah, so imagine you said not feeling like, you know, you can do anything well because you're multitasking, and how that affects our self-esteem as adults, how it affects the self-esteem of students, you know? That's huge.
I was going to say a similar thing about the multitasking, but also what she was talking about the need for the downtime so that our brains can have those random boredom. I'm running through all these lists and random things that I need to do or I hadn't thought about. I hadn't thought about the correlation of not having enough boredom time. And then I also will just say that we did as a family a couple of years ago, we took a month and did no screens. And the change in attitude of my preteens at the time was astounding. And we just stopped using video games and computers. And my husband and I made sure our phones were not used when they were around. And it was hard. There was a lot of I'm bored and a lot of I'm fighting with my siblings. But the attitude adjustment by the end of the 30 days was huge.
Thanks for sharing that. That's awesome. Any other responses to this or reactions? Just kind of in response to what you were just saying, at our retreats and some of our mission trips, we have, with middle schoolers, we have said, don't bring the phones. They weren't allowed this year, right?
Yeah, and it was a big shift. So most of the kids fought it. Some of the parents rejoiced. Some of the parents fought it because I know that you're connected to your kid that way and like you want to keep track of them, and I get that. But the students that have chosen to acknowledge that, either it be at camp or on mission trip or retreat, as much as a middle school student can report, say that it was a fuller experience for them, that they made friends, that they were able to get away from their crutch, that safety piece of their phone. But it's hard, and never have 100% done it. So I'll come around a corner. Even at our snow tubing trip this year, I came around a corner up at the tubing hill, and one dude had his phone, and they were all like, they are all like huddled around it. Like they had to get their fix, like they just couldn't. I'm like, there's a huge hill with tubes and snow, and you're like staring at a 4-inch screen, But the cabin experiences have been much better. Last year, totally tubular, the ride home was really, really challenging on a bus because they couldn't help themselves. They couldn't help themselves of not getting in trouble and not looking at things they're not supposed to and not sharing things they're not supposed to with their neighbor next to them. And so this year was way more successful with students not having their phones there. Yep.
With high school here, we have, if you have a high schooler, a mandate is usually not helpful. A challenge is usually better. Like, don't you think it could be interesting to explore this as a challenge, right? So that's
Middle
what
school,
we've
we
learned.
just mandate. Don't bring them.
Right. And in high school, on our mission trips last summer, we said, hey, biggest challenge, don't bring your phone. Second, level of that, bring it, but leave it always in your stuff when you leave for the day, because they're out doing a lot. The good things about like mission trips and camps is they are doing stuff all the time with their hands, so it just gets them off of it naturally. We had students who left their phones at home. We had students who left their phones in their stuff at our kind of host place. And I asked them, hey, how was it? And they reported back, oh, it was actually really nice. There's a camp that I know is in like kind of Branson area that high school, middle school, doesn't matter. It's a Christian camp, and you cannot bring your phone. If you get caught with it, you're out. Yeah. So they love it, though. Of course, it is hard on the front end because I think none of us, take something that is our favorite thing, and it'd be hard for any of us. But then realizing, what you can have when you're not distracted by that is even better. So, and they do, but it takes a minute to get there. Cool. So we want to invite you to connect with each other and share some of the stuff that's been helpful to you, and that way we can learn a little bit more and even more depth. So take a couple minutes, find 3 to 4 in a group of parents, share your names. It'll be fine. We'll all be fine. We don't need our phones. We can just face to face. Our cortisone will be
It's really no
it'll be
different than working
great.
with students, right? It's going to be okay. You can meet new
know.
people.
It's going to be fine. And we have a few questions on the screen for you. The first one is just imagine just reacting to this stat. Is this true for you? And then just what are you doing, if you're doing anything? And are there any of those practical tools that are really working for you? And then one last one. Let's brainstorm ideas on how we could create boredom. Isn't that fun? Creating boredom. So find somebody around you. Try to find 3 or 4. And we're going to discuss this for about 8 minutes. You can do anything for 8 minutes, right?
Okay, as you wrap up, think about as a group, what would you like to share for the greater good, for everybody else to hear? Anything you talked about that you'd like to share? True. You want to share? No? He's just stretching his legs. That's okay. You won't be graded, so if you didn't finish, it's fine. Well, guys, we got Susan coming back in. I know there's probably some questions. As I heard your discussion earlier and as I walked around, there's probably some things that she can address way better than me because she's the pro, the total pro. I'm going to let her get a drink because she just dealt with middle school. As I was leaving middle school, just so you guys know, I don't get to see you all a lot. As I was leaving middle school, there was a mom that came in because her daughter hadn't been treated well. Just know that happens, and we do our best. So I'll be tracking down some 8th grade boys that didn't treat a girl well. And then as I was walking in here, our friend Taylor, everybody say hi, Taylor, was bringing out some 7th grade boys that chose to not behave. So, it's not just at your house they act this way. They act that way here, too. And we love them, and we tell them to come back, and we try to correct them and send them in the right direction. But middle school is a really tough time. Those of you that walk by me and say, God bless you, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how I do it either. But I know that as a middle schooler, it was a really, really hard time for me. And it was the church that I finally found a home that cared for me, and the nerdy, mullet-wearing dude that I was accepted. So we're trying our best. Keep communicating with me. I got an email earlier about that. Of students that just are having a hard time and not fitting in. And unless I hear from you, unless Ashley hears from the high school parents, unless Taylor hears from you for care issues, we just don't know. So please just keep in touch. You guys will put my email up later, and Taylor's email and Ashley's, and you can always reach out to us. We are better together, and I hope these type of things help you realize that you're not the only one going through the things you're going through with your students in your home. There's variations to the theme in each house. but it's pretty consistently the same. So I'm going to give the mic to Susan, and then I'll run around with the other mic, and if you guys got questions, we'll dig into it for a bit. Who's first?
I'll just say that one tool that's worked for my wife and me is we bought a device from Best Buy. It's like a Google Wi-Fi extension device and has device control on it, so you can pause everybody, you can unpause everybody. And one of the nice things is they get so attached to these things, as soon as you unpause it and as soon as you pause it, they want to unpause it, you can get them to do like a lot of stuff, you know. And the whole nibbling thing is like, well, oh yeah, I forgot. We also need, you know, is the laundry, you know, you can teach middle-aged schoolboys to do a ton of stuff, you know.
Brilliant.
And I think the other thing is if you sit down and talk with them and just say, you know, what can we live with? What is a good use of our time? And you kind of sometimes weigh in leads to buy-in, if you will. And even if they don't get a vote, maybe they get a voice. Well, there's a lot of different kinds. We just got like a Google Wi-Fi extension device. And so you can get a 3-pack if you've got a bigger house than we have, you know. But when you take off the bedrooms and the bathrooms, you know, and they're only supposed to use the Wi-Fi in the living room, you maybe don't need, you know, Wi-Fi everywhere. So we just got one. It was like $100. You can get like a Disney Circle Go that wants a $10 a month subscription service. I think if you're an Apple user, the screen time, the kids hate that because I think you have tremendous control over what they're doing and visibility. And so anyway.
We had the Disney Circle at our house. My computer genius son hacked it, so we need to look for something more encrypted, something better. I love my intelligent son until he knows more than I do.
I was going to say that anything that you get, you go to a computer that's not your home computer and you Google, how do we hack this? That's what they're going to do, and then you figure that out.
So just to piggyback on that, we have an app called Our Pact. I don't know if anybody else has that, but I've discovered it. It is life-changing. Love my kids, but they're addicted to their phones, literally addicted. All that you said earlier, that is 100% them, especially our oldest boy. And if they don't want to unload the dishwasher, I just start to pull out my phone, and they're like, no, we'll unload it, because it wipes all the icons away. Like the only things that are on there are the default, like we have iPhones, so it's like the default text and talk. So they can still text and talk, and you can use this, so it'll stay with them when they're out and about, where like we have a circle, a Disney Circle from years ago, but you could only do it in the house. Like once they leave and they're on somebody else's Wi-Fi, then they can do whatever. So it's been really beneficial, and it's $1.99 a month. I mean, it's it's weird. It's Our, O-U-R, Pact, P-A-C-T. And my son hacked it yesterday, so he's figured out how you go in and you delete the settings. But every time that happens, we get the phone for 10 days, and it goes in our safe. So, last time he didn't learn, I guess. So he gets it removed tomorrow.
Hey, Susan, can you help preface some like conversations, how to set these boundaries with students? Like, I've just heard you say it a few times as fathers, maybe mothers are this way, we're like, nope, done, you're grounded for eternity, right? But if we don't have good conversations beforehand, how do we hold expectations afterhand? So.
Well, you always start with empathy, because if you're going to reduce the amount of time that they're doing something, it's going to hurt. And the addiction thing is a real thing, and they are not going to see the value of it. And whether they hear or believe or remember anything that I say on that is going to be, well, let me know. So you start with empathy. Like, I absolutely know that you want to, be on it all of your life. And I love you too much. So in our house, we have an 8th grader and a 6th grader, and we say, we follow the research. I love your brain too much. That is my standard. I love your brain too much to give you social media. You're in 8th grade. It's not good for you. I love your brain too much, and I'm really sorry. And I know that that's hard. We don't do, it sounds weird, like we don't do our pact or anything like that, because We just don't let him have it. And so he can literally have his cell phone in the living room. And then he docks it in the kitchen, which you can see from the living room anytime he leaves. He doesn't take it to school. He doesn't take it upstairs. He doesn't take it downstairs. He doesn't take it to youth group. He doesn't take it. Now, he's not driving, and so I do understand that we get concerns when people are driving. I don't know what we'll decide to do with that, because the statistics say that if they're driving with a cell phone, their accident rate goes up. And so I'm not sure what we'll decide to do on that. But at the moment, they don't take it places. And then he did take it into the bathroom one time because it was in his pocket. And it is hooked to my phone, and so I can just shut the whole darn thing down. So I heard a video playing, and I shut it down. And I was like, nope. And then he gave it to us for 24 hours. So I was like, I'm so sorry you forgot that and chose to take it out of your pocket and watch a video. I'm so sorry, it's mine now. So it is empathy and then firm boundaries. It is generally better to take something away for 1 or 2 days at a time so that you can extend it to 10 days if they stay being a pain in the butt, but kind of don't get that like, if you do like 3 months, then they're like, whatever, it doesn't even matter anyway, and you get that. So 24 or 48 hours. Trying to front load it. I absolutely know that you can hack this, or you can find someone who knows how to hack this. I'm trying to raise you to be a godly man who understands that just because you can do something does not mean you should do it. And if you do, for one, that's a heart issue, and you're going to have to talk to Jesus about that, and I get your phone. And when I can trust you, you can have it back. So it can be, I do liken a lot to alcohol as an adult metaphor. Like, it might not be the right time. So a yes can be a not yet. It can be turned into a that was not okay. I can go home tonight and have a glass of wine, but if I'm drinking a glass of wine here, if I drink 3 glasses of wine and then drive my kids someplace, if I give my kid 3 glasses of wine, we have to start looking at it kind of like that. We need to think about boundaries and when and where is it appropriate, and teaching them, hey, I know it's fun, but it's not necessarily appropriate.
Thanks.
That was too many words, sorry.
Take a drink.
Okay, yes, sir.
Do you recommend talking brain science with the children?
I do. I keep it relatively simple, but you can, I tend to tell them things like, if you're on it too much, it's going to make it really hard to focus. And then I use a lot of humor, like, you see the kids who are walking around like this all the time? You're going to be their boss. You're going to be able to focus. I'm teaching you to focus. You will make more money. Now, I don't know if that's true, but it works really well. And so now they walk around, they see kids in the mall that are just looking down. They're like, going to be his boss someday. Yes. So yeah, I do say, like, I follow the brain science. I need to set you up for success. My job is to steward you. You're not mine. You belong to God. So my job is to steward you to become the person that God created you to be, and not put things in your path that are going to get you off track. There was a question back here. Yeah. Right. Go, mama. Right, and it's the more people who understand, the better if you can find other people that also say not yet. So anxiety plus a cell phone is gas on a fire. And I have teenagers where the amount of times that I have to help them remove social media so that they don't want to kill themselves. Like, it's really not an exaggeration. They get quite suicidal if they're already really anxious, struggling with mental health stuff, and then they have it. So they will feel like they're more connected for a moment. It will for a moment. But then statistically, what happens in the brain, it's kind of complicated, but it ends up increasing the central nervous system and revving things up and increasing the anxiety. And so it doesn't pan out when you look statistics at giving somebody with anxiety a cell phone, making it better. It tends to not work out that way. If you limit the time, I would literally hard and fast line. Like if you were coming to me for therapy, I would say absolutely no social media. No. You could there is a phone I like called Gabb Wireless, Gabb, and it doesn't allow, there's no app store. There is a camera, but you can't share pictures. It doesn't have Wi-Fi, but it connects to a wireless, so you can text, you can group text, you can call. There's a calculator, there's an alarm, there's an FM radio, and it looks exactly like a smartphone. So that whole I want to look like everybody else exists. It's right under $100 and like $15 a month. So they make it as a phone that you can, as a transition phone, or as a phone for anybody who's a pain in not following any of the rules. And you're like, I've set these boundaries on social media, I've set these boundaries on this stuff, and you keep hacking it. Here's your replacement. I still need to get a hold of you. Here you go. I hope that helps.
I've had arguments from students that TikTok is not social media, but it is. It is. You can still message. You can still, I only dabble in it because I want to know what the students are talking about. I made my first dance TikTok last week. Not good. But like as I pull it up, it's already forcing feeds to me. So in Instagram world, you really would only see what you followed, right? But TikTok instantly starts pre-populating things it thinks you might like. And so like my 7th grader, we found him with it. And I go, dude, I want to share this with you. I want to show to you what it means. And I brought it up, and the first thing out was just like a string of cuss words. I'm like, I didn't pick that. You know I would never pick that on my phone, right? And he's like, yeah. Like, do you understand? Yeah, sorry. They just don't know, right? I mean, they just think it's a dance video app, right. But it's just social media that is video heightened,
So, and TikTok, just so you know, used to be Musical.ly, which got a really bad rap because the thing went viral about pornography is not the worst thing on the internet. Musical.ly is. And so they rebranded themselves as TikTok. TikTok is one of the worst things on the internet. Yeah. They're not going to worry less if they have social media. They're just going to be able to see it, and it's going to mess with them more. And so the thing that I would encourage them is we all need to teach each other how to treat ourselves, how we want people to treat us. And so if you hear about it, being like, dude, that's not cool. I didn't give you permission to do that. It's not okay. And hold them a little bit accountable. And then they'll, like, if they make fun of them for that, then you get to have a hard talk about how do you figure out who a friend is and how do you figure out who's trustworthy. And these are hard conversations, but they're good conversations. And so it's kind of like not shying away from, we can't keep bad things from happening to our kids, and that's the thing we want to do. We were like, give me the formula. How much time, what apps, what's the thing that makes them okay? And there is none of that. There's just a lot of hard to navigate. There's certainly things that can set them up for worse, which we've talked about, but there isn't a protect them from all the things.
All generations have said our generation has it worse. I think this one has a vote in it. If something goes wrong in their life, it doesn't just die when people finally forget about it. It sticks online for a long time, so it's tough. One more question, and then we'll pray out, and we'll.
Yeah, I'm doing the brain stuff, but not really the spiritual warfare. I kind of figured that's y'all's domain at the moment. But yeah, I'm bringing in more brain stuff. I did like 2 brain words for the middle schoolers. And they were like, I'm out. So I'm doing more for the high school. And really, social media tends to be much better by your junior year. So I say not before 16 is my general, like, if everything was perfect, there'd be no social media before 16. And then after that, they're able to navigate it better.
All right, if we put up on the screen our contact information, I've got some cards on me if you want that. Take a picture, feel free to reach out with us. Listen, I mean, we spend a lot of time with students, and so we know some stuff, but we know the same thing you guys do. We're just not you, right? Like everybody responds better to somebody that's not their parents. Our hope over and over, as you hear this, is we want to partner with you. We get minimal time with your students, and we so enjoy it. But we're not the biggest influence in their life. You are. So the way that we can encourage you as a family to partner with us and partner with the church, that's our goal. So please help us with that. We've got some feedback forms in the back. We'll send it out digitally as well. Let us know what you're thinking so we can continue to partner with you and help your students walk through a really challenging time in their life and help them to grow to become faithful adults. And we know that only happens when we're surrounded by faithful people. So that's what we're here for. So that's up there for you. I'm going to be here for a while. Susan will be here for a while. She doesn't have to speak to high school for like 45 minutes. You get, or maybe almost an hour. You get a breather. But we're here to answer your questions. Talk to MJ and Jeff as you go out. They're some of our Sunday school teachers. They've got a college age adult boy, and they're super wise of things as well. But we're here for you guys. Can I pray for y'all? Lord God, we thank you so much for these brave parents that have come here to hear more about you, Lord, to hear more about how their students are made and how these things are affecting them. Lord, may we be a community that has eyeballs on our young people, not just ours, but everybody's. May we help lead this generation to be an amazing generation that's making an impact in this world because they love you and they want to change the world for the good. Lord, we ask you to take some of these dark things and protect us and protect our children. But may we know that you love us dearly and you have made us for connection. So we are thankful for these moments where we get together. Lord, fill us up, protect us. May we lift each other up as we leave this space. In your name we pray. Amen.